Hello, my name is Peter Cinnamon, and this is a podcast which is all about the Irish League. We are right in the thick of the off-season, the early pre-season, whatever you want to call it. But it's been a while since many of our teams kicked the ball in earnest, but there has been plenty of things going on. So I've kind of gathered them all into one big ball. I'm going to pick through all the big stories that have been coming our way over the past few weeks, from the recent European draw to all the transfers that have happened, as well as this potential price increase which is coming our way at the turnstile. So sit back and relax and enjoy this one-off summer episode of Kicking Match. Yes, dusted off the microphone after what has been maybe a month or a couple of weeks. I don't know. It feels like a lot and not very long at the same time. Look, I just want to justify this Zoom premium, whatever I'm paying for still, even during the off season. But here to talk to me, natter through that thing that we enjoy, the Irish League. It's Man About Town. It's podcaster with a shout at the Oval Glentoran podcast. Hello, Matthew Brown.
Hello, Peter. Nice to speak to you again in this close season and get stuck in another podcast and talk about the weird and wonderful goings on in the Irish League.
Yeah, I have a list. I'm not quite sure the exact order of all the off-season news and events that have gone down, so like just shout in the middle if I've forgotten something big. But we have the European draw, we have the price increase news about money coming into the league when it comes to the grounds, talking about how perhaps some teams need a bit more money in coming into them, bit of kits, all the transfers that have happened so far. So it's a big fun like barbecue platter of it all. And I think if we can go to one thing, which is the big juicy burger, which is obviously the main event at any Northern Irish barbecue, it's probably the European draw. It's just dawned on me that I'm going to have to try and pronounce some of the teams that these that our clubs have actually been drawn against. But it's happened. We know who of our four teams who they're going to be playing against, some of the teams that they could be playing against if they do well. And I think if you're to take the draw for the Champions League and the Europa Conference League as a whole, I think this is pretty excellent. These are good draws that all of our clubs have gotten, broadly.
Yeah, pretty much. I think so. The thing is, you always think that your team gets a good draw, and then you just never know. Look at the Glens last year. I thought that was a good draw, but you've seen Linfield will have PTSD from playing RFS. So Lauren will be quite aware of that. And you just never know what they expect from an Icelandic team, for example, for Linfield. Typically, they used to hand out batterings, but don't think they're strong these days. You're always just going in. I find this time of the year, you find yourself delving deep into Wikipedia pages of teams you've never heard of, just to see sort of what their pedigree is in both domestic and European competition.
Well, they're doing it to us as well. Like, I'm getting random messages from the equivalent of me in insert other countries going, do you have any stats on this team? And then I just very lazily go talk to them. I can't be arsed getting Wikipedia up right now. But let's talk RFS, shall we? They're back, like some sort of revival, sudden twist in the episode. Larne are going to Latvia to try and avenge Linfield's defeat via penalties just 2 summers ago. It's in the Champions League, and I think if you're Larne, you would have absolutely have taken this. I think RFS looked beatable 2 years ago. They should have been beaten by Linfield. We've spoken before about how Larne need to step up and show that they want to do well, want to get this pedigree established in Europe. And for them, no matter what happens in this game, they'll be playing other games in Europe. Again, they're in this Champions little channel path, so it could have been a variety of other teams. Maybe RFS have gotten a lot better. I've heard that RFS themselves are delighted with this draw, so grudge match, let's just say.
I'm sure the RFS are delighted because the last time they played Northern Irish team, they went through. But I do think Lauren will be pleased. I suppose it comes down to, if you look at that Linfield team and this Lauren team, is this Lauren team stronger than that Linfield team? And I think it probably is, because they ended up going on that season and winning the league. Lauren did it, if I'm not wrong. And then obviously they've won it again this year. So I think that Larne are probably a bit stronger. On top of that, I have no idea. Did they play on plastic pitches out in Latvia? I imagine they probably do. I don't know, but
They've got a new stadium or something like that. I think I retweeted the other day. So it's different atmosphere, different cauldron. They've got a good draw as well, as they're going to do exactly what Linfield did. They're going to start in Latvia and then they're going to come back to Northern Ireland to play the second game, which is always what you want. They'll always be more beneficial. So it's set up for them. It's 2 weeks away. It's the 9th or 10th of July is when they'll play the first game, and then a week later they'll play the second one. So I think they would admit themselves there's pressure. This is why you work all year, is to get this big game in front of you. So for Larne, it's not new names to really establish a team. You've got this team that is stuck together with a few additions here or there for the past 2 years, and now it's time to finish the story, or at least start the story, get a good chapter in to kick things off.
yeah, it's a massive opportunity for them. They would love nothing more than to be the first team to qualify for group stages. Let's be honest, if they qualify for the group stage, it's going to be the Conference League, but they go through a round against RFS, then it gives them an absolutely fantastic opportunity, because just you're then skipping out a more difficult round effectively in the Conference League, and obviously it boosts coefficient for future fixtures or for the whole league. But Lauren will not be bothered about that. They'll only be caring about themselves. It is a good opportunity, and I just think that they have to go in really confident, and not be afraid, and just play their normal game. I suppose it's really hard for them to research these teams, I suppose, as well.
I guess the normal game is not going for one up and then let the other team go back and score all the goals in the last few minutes, or just do what Linfield did in an own separate way. Like it to go through it of how this like snakes and ladders down. So Lawrence technically in the Champions League right now, earliest stage. They're in this Champions path, which is very, very handy, as the further down the ladder or the snake that you slip, you will then have other teams that have slipped through. So you look at all these teams that are in this Champions League path. You've got a few that you probably wouldn't want to get entangled with. The likes of, well, Helsinki's the one that stands out to me amongst all these other ones, and Ludogorets as well. But
Yeah.
so they've got RFS, and then win or lose, they then will slip down into the other competitions, Europa League first, then Europa Conference League. If what Linfield did 2 years ago, if people will remember, is that they actually won one fixture. They won that round and they got through against TNS of Wales. Or the New Saints, whatever. And that helped them then progress to the second round of the Champions League, where they then got booted out. They then got booted out and then went down into the Europa League. They lose that again, totally understandable. Then they got into that final one-off round, and that was with RFS in the Europa Conference League. Now, if Larne loses this, they actually get a little bit of benefit, because they got the bricks in that this was one of the fixtures that will, if they lose, they'll skip a round in the Europa Conference League qualifying. They won't get to the final one, but they'll go straight, if they lose, straight to the Europa Conference League qualifying, but they'll skip a round, which is very, very handy. What they want to do here is they want to beat RFS over two legs. Whoever wins that, Larne or RFS, they'll go on to Bodo Glimt, and I think they're going to lose to Bodo Glimt. Doesn't matter if it's RFS or Larne. I think they're going to lose that fixture. And then from there, they'll slip down into the Europa League. They'll go to the main third qualifying round, where there's plenty of rather equally as good teams as Bodo Glimt floating around, and maybe they'll get a good draw, but it's very likely they'll suffer a similar fate of what would happen against Bodo Glimt. And then off the back of that, you'll go down to the Europa Conference League, where you should be, I believe, one game away, like Linfield were, for getting into the group stage, which will be massive, and they'll stick in the Champions path. So they're likely to face off, as we've seen in previous years, maybe Kazakhstan, Estonia, Faroe Islands, something like Luxembourg, perhaps. And those are the type of nations that it's not going to be a walk in the park, but it should be, as we've seen before with Linfield and RFS, something that is winnable across two legs.
I think you summed it up perfectly, and I think that's exactly what Lauren need to hope for. Getting it through this round, which is possible, is absolutely vital. And it's the only way. This is the thing, like everyone's hedging their bets on a team from the Irish League qualifying for the Europa group stage, not really, or the Conference League group stage. The only way that is going to happen is for the champions, and that's going to be Larne. This season, they're the ones who everyone has to focus on. If you're looking for an Irish League team to qualify for the group stages, then it is going to be Larne. And the only way, in my opinion, the only way they're going to do that is by getting through this round
I would
in
agree.
the Champions League and skipping that difficult round then further along the line.
And it just helps that you can lose your way through a little bit of extra money, because every round you get through, you'll then get further money because you're playing another round. And it's the same way, of course, if you win in the Europa Conference League. So it's, I'm sure many people would say Larne is probably the one team, especially if you're a title rival, that you don't want to get any more money in investment. But when you sit there in October and look at this amazing Larne team and think, why did Kenny do it? It's for this. It's to try and get the money and the big bucks. Because then if you get through to the group stage, even more cash is potentially there. Sponsorship, gate receipts, all the rest. To the point where I can't even, if I'm being completely honest, imagine what that looks like and how potentially league altering that is. To be fair, we've seen down south with Shamrock Rovers and Dundalk. Shamrock Rovers did twice, but they've done it. Both got to the Europa League group stages, and like it helped them get a bit of success. But it's not like they are a Bayern Munich all conquering for a decade style team. Obviously, there's different economics down there, but there's no doubt if Lauren was to get there, it would be quite scary for everybody else that's trying to compete to win the Gibson Cup.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that the way you look at it too for Lauren, it's okay. People think that Kenny Bruce is throwing about his money, and that's just unlimited and it's going to go on forever. And I think they reported losses of 1.6 million or something last year, going through that amount of money. They now have another investor from America. The guy who makes movies, his name something crazy like Trainwreck or something. But
Baseball
it's
man in my head.
yeah, he basically is going to want a return on his investment, and to do that, they are going to have to qualify at some stage. And as you said, the you can lose your way through. I remember the year that Linfield did go out to the RFS. It was seen as like a history making run for Linfield, but they played four ties, the 1-1. I think they conceded like 17 goals or something. You know what I mean? And it's like, but you can do that.
And the one that they did win, it was a big blaster from Jamie
That's
Mulgrew, saved their bacon.
Yeah, exactly. So you can get through this. This is really set up really nicely, effectively for Irish League teams now.
Mm-hmm.
People were giving off when the Conference League was founded because it's just a money making scheme by UEFA. Probably is, but it gives you a really good opportunity for the smaller nations to have teams represented in Europe that can give a huge boost to those clubs and their supporters. But I don't think if Lauren do qualify for the group stages, I mean, how much more money can they spend? Really, it's like, are they going to go out and start paying players over £2,000 a week? Are they going to go? I don't see that happening, to be honest. I do think the league will still remain somewhat competitive. I don't think there'll be a shoe in every year for the league title. And you mentioned the likes of Shamrock Rovers and Dundalk. I think Dundalk qualify for the group stages twice as well, and Dundalk are probably going to get relegated this season. So it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't last forever because Kenny Bruce is one man, but is he going to invest forever? Or if you remember Blackburn in the mid 90s as well, they were sort of throwing money about, and then it all dried up. So they do have to be careful, and I think it will be. Kenny Bruce is a smart man; he'll be careful as well. He won't just go breaking the bank should they get into those group stages.
Well, they've got plenty of football to play between now and then, and it'll be interesting seeing our fellow small league, let's say. Comrades and RFS back on these shores again. Other teams that'll be coming here to play European football. I mean, to go through it again, first qualifying round in the Europa Conference League. No teams in the Europa League at this stage. They're just all going straight in the Europa Conference League. Crusaders and Linfield both start in the first qualifying round. Crews have got a dream tie. Welsh team Carlanafon Town. I really should have got that phonetically done. Who also play at the Oval apparently in Carlanafon.
Yeah, they do. There's a few teams played that ground as far as I think we could have. The Glens could have got a team from Wales last year until the regionalisation came out, and then they decided to send us the Malta. But and I noticed that there are few teams played that ground. But it's worse than our Oval.
Well, they play. They came fifth last year in the Welsh League, and they're kind of
this is their first time ever qualifying.
they're kind of up towards Anglesey direction. They're up north of Wales, and I think team for team, like we're far better than the Welsh League, or at least we're a step above the Welsh League overall. I'm pretty sure TNS would finish in the top half, or the top teams would finish in the top half of our league, perhaps. But I think home and away, Crusaders have the pedigree. I think consistently the Crews have been very good in Europe. They've always been built and battling and always start all right. They've had their wobbles. So that's a great draw to get someone from the Welsh League. It's always one of the leagues that you would like. I don't know how much Linfield getting a team from Iceland is the dream, but it definitely could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, and if you look at the team at Linfield, they've got. I don't think they're doing too because that Icelandic league's in full flow at the
Yeah.
minute, which is always the sort of negative thing for teams from our league. But they're not going too good this season. They do have a bit of European pedigree. The big like Poznan, they got through to the playoff stage, but that was 10 years ago. And they eventually got dusted by Inter Milan. But in recent years, they got hammered last year 4-1 over two legs by Bohemians, who I think Linfield are better than Bohemians. So you can sort of maybe look at that and think Linfield do have a decent chance against this team.
So those are both winnable games. They don't have the ability to just lose and then get another payday and another round. They are playing for keeps here, and you get through that first round and then you get a whole load of extra money. I'm not quite sure exactly what it is, but previous times it's been the likes of like almost around $250,000 kind of thing, so it's big cash. Now Cliftonville go straight into the second qualifying round, and we know who two of the teams they will play. They will play one of Auda from Latvian league. Again, another Latvian team could be there. They came third last year in their league. Or they could play against Faroese opposition. Yes, Torshavn. Now, they've had their times against Irish league teams before. Do I believe
we beat them 1-0 in the COVID season where you only played
they
one
lost to
leg.
Crusaders a couple of years ago. They've had decent runs when it comes to the Europa Conference League. Recently, they've went through 3 rounds. So the past 2 years, where they got beat by Danish opposition Viborg, and then they also 2 years ago, and then last year they got beaten by Croatian opposition. So look, they could be tough. Either one of these will be not a walk in the park, but it still will be decent opposition where you think Cliftonville could do this all right.
Yeah, definitely. I think it depends on which sort of side of the draw. I don't know anything about the Latvian team. Torshavn are one of them teams that just have always came up against. It seems like Irish League opposition. Like I can remember them playing teams from here a few times, and Faroese teams in general. To be honest with you, they've been teams that we've been rubbing your hands whenever you get. But I think one of their teams qualified for the group stages last year of the Conference League. So they're obviously getting better. They've obviously invested in their infrastructure within the league and are therefore doing a lot better than previously. So Cliftonville can't be complacent, but they they have to be going into this game thinking they can win it because they have full time ambitions. As far as I'm aware, they've got several players who do train basically full time. They've got a full time manager, so they have to be going in somewhat confident, no matter which of those two teams they get.
So if Linfield, let's start with them, do get past their Icelandic opposition, they have been drawn against another first qualifying round matchup, and that is either going to be against Ballatown of Wales or Pade Linneskumbond from Estonia, who finished fourth in the Estonian League last year. So again, that for me, the Linfield draw, the first game that they're playing is probably harder than it is their second, what could come up after that. Now, this Estonian team is currently fourth in the 10-team Estonian league right now, so they're kicking about. They haven't had a complete fall off, but I think sometimes in Northern Ireland we have this attitude that every other country must have a better league than us, and it's some sort of 10 million people country or region that has like the ability or the infrastructure that's far better than us. I don't think that's always the case. So that's set up pretty nicely for Linfield if they can sneak their way through it. Like Welsh or Estonian opposition, pretty good.
Yeah, you'd imagine so. The Estonian team were beaten by Torshavn. I think it was last year. So you're sort of thinking if Linfield came up against Torshavn, you would definitely expect them to win. So whilst Estonian teams aren't really that familiar to Irish League opposition, looking at that, I think you're right. I think that there's the second round's almost easier than the first. The Icelandic team are a banana skin, I suppose, just based on the history of Irish League teams against Icelandic teams. I don't think we've had too much joy there, to be honest. I can remember Reykjavik hammering Glentoran a couple of times. But it'll be interesting.
Saying that though, Crusaders, if they do get through their Welsh opposition, the party or the party poppers will kind of be putting away. Legia Warsaw is the team that will be waiting for them after. So you never know. Maybe they could have some sort of huge, big European giant killing, but unfortunately, those are just the big boulders in your way that can come up. That is a tough draw and a big boy at this stage of the competition, to say the least.
Yeah, Legia Warsaw is. I've been to Polish games and they're absolutely crazy. So you can only imagine it. I think the Linfield play them last season. Maybe in the Conference League. And I think they got put out by them. So yeah, you'd be absolutely amazed. But then Crusaders did amazing things in Europe last year. Led me to believe that they were going to go on a title challenge off the back of that because they were so good. I was tipping them for all sorts. I thought they'd have a brilliant season. They'll be delighted to obviously be in Europe this season, but
You and me
wasn't.
both, brother. I was all aboard that train, all aboard that train. So, I mean, this is good because for all these teams, if they can do well, obviously they'll be making bank, which will then get them through rounds, which will then help invest. You would think in players in the league. Could that trickle down? We've seen this year compared to previous years a lot more transfer fees being thrown about, which I just think says is kind of edge towards more professionalism at the top of the league is filtering down. And on top of that, then, if you do well, coefficient goes up. I know coefficient is some sort of magical ancient language, which I feel like makes less sense than how Easter is decided every year. But it does help, I'm led to believe, means that maybe we can play against weaker teams in the future, avoid these kind of better, stronger teams on a solo club level because Lauren haven't got a huge, great bit of pedigree, so they struggle. They'll always be the unseeded, but also just helps push up the general Northern Ireland League level. Gotta win to get helping hands in the future. So there's a lot on the line for the clubs involved, but also maybe helping the clubs that come after them.
No, absolutely. It is this old as a supporter, people are like, oh, but the coefficient and I mean it's nice. It is nice for your when you qualify for Europe, when you look and go happy days, you maybe get You get an easier draw or something similar, but it's difficult, I suppose, when you're a fan of another club to want other clubs to then go through in Europe because of what we talked about earlier and about the financial advantage. And I very much doubt that any Linfield fan will want Lauren to go far or vice versa. And I just think that that's not going to be the case. And the bottom six teams are definitely not going to want all of the European qualified teams this year to do really well because it's just going to make that gap get bigger between the bottom six and the top six. Like I was saying earlier about Lauren, I think there's a ceiling in the league where wages will go and where transfer fees will go, and I don't think it will ever go ridiculously beyond that ceiling. And I think that you Lauren are maybe near that. But there is then a big gap between the bottom six and the top six forming if those teams do well.
To be bold, if we're to try and put out, I'm not going to go game for game prediction, but as a batch, I would say I've got a little dotted line between victories across both legs. I'm going to put that at three. I'm going to say if only two or fewer get through, I think that will have been a disappointment based on the teams that are on offer. Three is great. I think the most likely one is probably, yeah, it's hard to say. Like I was gonna say everybody gets through their Europa, but then obviously Cliftonville doesn't play until the next round. But out of those three, at least two of them should win across two legs, I would say.
Yeah, I think that maybe the hardest one out of the lot of them might be. I know that obviously the Icelandic team are a bit of an unknown for Linfield, but I think it may be Lauren if just going off the fact that RFS are coming here and knowing that they've put out an Irish League team before. Maybe that might be the hardest draw between them and Linfield. There's probably it's you could put a £5 note between it. It's that small a gap on which of those two teams. But I do fully expect Crusaders to go through, and I think that Cliftonville probably will too.
Yeah. Well, obviously, we'll only have one round. Cliftonville are going to wait a round until they
Yeah.
get there. So, that's what's set up for them. Then, my big thing for Lauren is that I think they're going to have to get this monkey off their back. I thought they whimpered slightly at the end of the season, so and they haven't added like anybody big. That's probably not a bad thing in regards to squad cohesion, but I think they need to go out there and play with a bit more precision and focus this time because they've been caught in Europe before. I think they really have. Okay, so that's my Euros chat scribbled out. Probably can do a quick hit on the news that came out a few weeks ago that the Irish League is increasing its price. We saw a few clubs put out their season ticket promo that talked about a £15 home ticket for an adult for the forthcoming season. Last year we saw it creep up from 12 to 13. Many people suggested this was the slow march towards 15. It wasn't that slow at all. We're here and we're going to be living in that next season. Many people have pointed out that it's went up by 50%, and was it 7 years or so? Because it was £10 only 7 years ago, and now it's 15. Surprised, and what's your reaction to it?
Well, I commented to a friend at the end of the last season that ticket prices would probably hit a £15 mark within 2 to 3 years. What I didn't expect was it would happen in 2 to 3 weeks. So I was quite surprised, and whilst it makes season tickets tremendous value, and on top of that, I think though if clubs had have thought about it, they probably wouldn't have put their season tickets at the prices that they did. But I think that it does make a season ticket tremendous value this season. We'll not see that next year. The season tickets will all go up next year. I am be very, very surprised if everyone doesn't put their season tickets up next year. The prices are creeping higher and higher, and it's okay to say it's only a couple of quid, and that's fine if you're an individual going to games. But there's a lot of families that this will alienate. I know, for example, that the price points my nephew's now turned 12, so he doesn't qualify for the kids for a quid sort of setup. And for him and my brother to go to games, it just becomes then much more expensive. You're looking at 25 quid for two people to go to the games. The children's tickets are up to a tenner, aren't they? Isn't that right? So it's 15 and 10. So it's 25 quid for them to go to games. £100 a month on football matches is a lot of money to ask for two people to watch Irish League football. So I think that it's maybe it's not great to go up 2 quid like and such a short space of time. I just hope it doesn't really damage tendencies. But I mean, the product since COVID is definitely there's been more demand for it. So I'm not surprised that they've put the prices up so quickly in that period of time since coming back from the sort of
Well,
shutouts.
we've all seen there's plenty of chat about it, just about how inflation has crept up over the past 2 years. In particular, I've seen reporting on grocery shopping in that the past 2 years, and so it's went up by 25% on the whole, just on kind of a general grocery bill. Now, things don't increase in price at a steady rate across all levels of society, and plenty of we've seen a lot of strikes, we've seen a lot of people getting pay rises across many different sectors of work. I'm sure we've seen that wages within the Irish League has increased, costs for everything as well has increased. So no doubt that's what's being said by clubs. There's increased costs. We need to find it some way, somehow. It's increased costs from every facet of what they do. And one of the ways to do it is to put that on to the people paying in. I'm sure they're also getting more sponsorship money than they ever had before. The man we've talked about before, their Lauren owner Kenny Bruce, he's been in my mentions when I was posting about this. He was saying that the league has had a 500% increase in experience for everyone connected. Interesting way of putting it. I don't know if a lot of fans outside of Larne would agree with that assessment. I think if you went to Larne 7 years ago and now going to Inver Park in 2024, I don't know if you can put an exact number on it, but quality of football, facilities, everything else that goes around, it's fivefold, probably, yes. I know we've been waiting a long time for investment in grounds, and that's been a big thing for fans in regards to what they're paying into the place that they're watching these games at. It's a big, I don't know if that's been totally been accepted by all fans across the league.
Yeah, it's nonsense. No harm. I'm sure Lauren fans are enjoying themselves 500% more because they were sitting bottom of the championship a number of years ago, so it's inevitable that they will have. There definitely hasn't been. Almost there has been, it's been great going to the RC games and the atmosphere has been a lot better, a lot of ground. It's brilliant when you go down to Corrigan and they've got a lot of fans in through the gates. Attendances are definitely up. There seems to be the coverage is fantastic. Like there's a lot of coverage now. You can watch a game near enough most weeks. There's always a game on TV. Clubs are streaming themselves. The digital output by David Kerr and the team there at Niffle is absolutely brilliant. So the professionalism and coverage and things like that in the league has definitely gone up. Has the quality gone up? Probably slightly with the full time teams. But has it gone up 500%? I mean, how do you quantify that? I don't understand. I think it was just an off the cuff remark from Kenny Bruce, but it was quite, it was just it just wasn't wisely chosen words. I would say I've seen a lot of fans venting their anger towards Niffle for this, but this is a vote that was taken to Niffle by clubs and voted on by representatives of clubs. So this was brought by the clubs and voted for by the clubs. So as I said elsewhere, if fans are unhappy about these price points and they feel very strongly, there is absolutely nothing stopping them from lobbying someone at their club. They can lobby an approachable board member. I'm sure every club has a supporters liaison officer or similar, and they can say, whether it comes in the form of sort of a joint letter or sort of from supporters clubs or something, or just a general feel from fans saying, we're not really happy about this. This is making it unaffordable. Our members or our supporters need to pick and choose games. It's especially going to affect away games and especially going to affect away game attendances, I think. Then they can take that to the clubs, and next season you'll maybe see a £1 drop. Maybe the clubs will say, you know what, that's it's worth looking at.
Yeah, it's not been a hard. Let's be fair. It's not going to be a hard 15 across the board. It's just that the max that they can charge has been agreed to be moved up to 15. But we've seen over the past number of decades, it's always hit that, and clubs can obviously decide, you know, kid for a quid, and there'll be plenty of situations. I know there's been a lot of controversy over particularly away fans concession allocations, but you know, if some club wants to decide that it's only a tenner in for everybody, they have the ability to do that. Maybe there'll be a situation where it's 15 quid for stand X, it's 12 quid for stand Y. You know, we just don't know. But I think it's definitely a sign when some of the bigger clubs that are going full time or have dipping their finger in some elements of full time football are saying, we've got a good ground with great quality games. We want to charge a higher rate. As you'd see in most forms of entertainment, music, it's a lot more money to see Shania Twain down at Ormo Park than it is 5 minutes around the corner, 15 minutes walk to go see a 3 band lineup at the Pavilion Bar on the Ormo Road. You know, it's broad spectrum, it's cheaper, it's different, but we have seen that usually all teams kind of stick together. So yes, we'll see how that all funnels down, because there's been so much pump from the league saying that, look, our attendances are improving, isn't this great? We will now see maybe how a price increase when everybody else is paying more for a lot of other things, will that impact attendances? I guess you probably fit this in this conversation in that I thought this very interesting news was reported by the Belfast Telegraph a number of weeks ago, that only 4 out of the 12 Premiership teams made some form of profit, or at least didn't make a loss last year. Niffel said they have no major concerns about this, but the clubs listed in this article in May by Stephen Looney suggested that only Crusaders, Linfield, Carrick, and Cliftonville are the only teams that didn't make a loss, and that across the league there was around 3 million of losses. That's that in the era, and things look to have changed recently, but in the era where we're hearing about clubs tightening their belts only 18 months ago, is this not slightly worrying?
Yeah, well, it's strange to see the spending of the likes of Ballymena, who, let's be honest, they were crying poverty a couple of years ago under when David Jeffrey was there. They had to make a lot of cuts. They said they're really struggling. The talk is that major sponsor McBurney's has put some money in there, and they've decided to go and spend it all. So they've gone out and they've paid fees for players. They're paying good wages for players. And don't get me wrong, they're getting decent players. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know what sort of wages they're on. But yeah, you just got to be careful. I suppose you've got Corey in there going full time. A lot of change there. They're having to throw money at players, and likewise Carrick are doing similar. They're not signing. They're signing players who are coming from full time football. So they're not exactly signing players on buttons. So I think that if you were to look at the wages that were increased, because it is now necessary for every club to publish their accounts on their website by a certain date in order to get their license. That's fine, but not every club discloses what their wage bill is. So Linfield disclose what their wage bill is. There's many clubs that don't. I think it would be interesting if you were to get those wage bills and see the increase. It would probably be a bit frightening. You just hope that there isn't a big bubble.
Wages is the one thing they say that's largely this is what's behind these deficits.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're paying a full-time player, the minimum you can pay him is £430 a week, because that's what the minimum wage is. Now, £430 a week, not that long ago, would have been a very good Irish League wage. So if you're paying someone that now as a minimum wage, then naturally the wages are going to go up, and there's probably around 4 or 5 clubs that are paying that sort of money now. So yeah, naturally you will see that go up. But now you're hearing, obviously it's just on the sort of grapevine at the time, like no one is really sure, but you're hearing that there are clubs in the bottom six starting to pay full-time wages for part-time players, and that's sort of concerning, because where are they going to make that money? Because if you qualify for Europe, you get about 150 grand for one round, and then manage you could touch lucky like Crusaders and get a Welsh team, but you could also touch very unlucky like Linfield and get an Icelandic team. Where it's quite expensive to fly to.
Everybody can't get into Europe. It doesn't get handed round either, That's so if you're £1 million of debt and you don't get into Europe, what happens? Uh I guess investment, cut the bills, make money, etc. But for me, there's nothing really more to it than just this is what's being reported. But it is something where you're hearing talk, or the talk is now stability of the league. This doesn't scream stability to me overall. So that's one aspect of it. It's something we will keep an ear and eye out for over the next couple of months, and just how clubs do their business. Sticking with Niffle, after getting their vote completely blown out of the water by junior clubs last year, they decided, how about let's not do that, let's talk about Sunday football again. And 11 out of the 12 current or forthcoming top flight teams agreed Sunday football sounds good to them. Loughgall, the only one that didn't agree that there should be kind of a new provision in regards to how the league looks at Sunday football. So, one, the Premiership teams want to do their own thing. This is an example of how they're going to do it. And yeah, 11 out of 12. So more Sunday football on the way, it feels like.
Well, why not? Like, you might as well try it, and if it doesn't work, I don't think that Niffle will stick with it. They're quite progressive, they want to see an increase in the numbers. If the Sunday football does not prove to be successful and there isn't an increase in the numbers, I doubt they'll stick with it. I remember many years ago, not that many years ago, actually. I remember only a few years ago, Friday night football was absolutely despised by so many, especially the Glentoran fans really, really hated Friday night football. I actually really like Friday night football now. I think it's great. The biggest attendance I've seen at the Oval, apart from Glentoran and Linfield games in the past, like I would say decade, would be the Glens played Cliftonville on a Sunday. I think it was an 11 a.m. kickoff, and the crowd that Cliftonville brought. Like Cliftonville would usually bring a few hundred to the Oval. Their away attendance at the Oval is just not great, to be honest. They travel in numbers well at home, travel away not really. But that day they absolutely packed out the away end. It was bunged. So if that is going to be the novelty, oh, it's a Sunday game, no one's really doing anything, it's early kickoff, you can go make a day of it, maybe go to the match, watch Super Sunday on after. And the idea this weekend, the football that they're promoting too, it's thinking outside the box. It's trying something a wee bit different to see if it works. A match on a Friday, a match on a Saturday, a match on a Sunday, and maybe a Sky game on the Monday. That's fine. Like that's it's okay to give that a go and see if it works. And if it doesn't, then you say, oh, well, we've tried, we'll move on.
I love the Fridays. I think everybody loves the Fridays from a overall league interest point of view. It's like our Sunday, Super Sunday. It's like when there's not a Friday night game on that's being streamed or televised, everybody's like, what's happening? Like, it's a real interesting. As much as I'm a big fan of the going around the grounds on a Saturday afternoon thing, that one game on the Friday is just a really nice centerpiece that everyone can kind of engage. And I think it's increased engagement around the league further because fans are getting the chance to watch 70 if they want to watch 90, a half of a Ballymena, or what is Glentoran like, or how is Linfield doing, or what's going on with Lauren. Obviously they try and play as many Friday games at home as they possibly can, so it's something that I've enjoyed. I think other people enjoy. Are we getting a situation where it's you watch your Friday night game, you see your live team if they aren't playing in any of the other ones on the Saturday, and then you go home and Saturday 5:30's not too bad either. It's all right every once in a while. Or is it going to be a situation where it's Friday, Saturday, and then you go on and watch it on Sunday? Of course, the thing is going to be if and when there's going to be an Irish League TV type streaming service that makes it more accessible and available to look back at games and all the rest. But it's an interesting move, and more moves that are going down in relation to Niffle. Matthew, can we have a moment of silence for the sub-regional Stadia Fund? It's over. It's gone. It's now going to be known as the Northern Ireland Football Fund, and it's going to be handed out by next year. We no longer have to talk about this being in waiting. It's going to happen. People can apply for it now, and it's going to be given out next year. Wow, what a decade and a half that was.
Yeah, taking a very, very long time, long overdue. Interesting to read comments from some. So obviously, some politicians are saying, "Oh, it's not enough," and this is just the first batch, and we will hope for more. And then there's other politicians saying, no harm. There's absolutely no chance of any more money coming in. This is your lot. That's fair enough. This is where we're at the minute. There's obviously a lot of people asking for a lot of money for various things that are probably, or in fact, definitely more important than football stadiums. So we'll take the 36 million for now, and we'll see what we can do with it. As you say, long overdue. Interesting to read that the criteria has changed somewhat. Clubs all have to put forward business cases, and in those business cases, there comes a lot of expenses. So I know that my own club, Glentoran, have paid out tens of thousands of pounds in surveys and reports and various different things to try and get this business case up to scratch. Ours are having to do crowdfunding to try and raise money in order to complete their application because of the extra cost. They're having to do a BAT survey that's costing £5,000.
What is this BAT survey? I've heard more about BAT surveys in the past 6 months with clubs trying to get these things off the ground. Who are these people doing BAT surveys? Because I am in the wrong game.
Yeah, if they're charging that sort of money, they're having to do a bat survey to see if they're going to disturb the bats. It's absolutely bonkers that the amount of money that's being shelled out by clubs. And then at the end of it, they could all be told that they're unsuccessful. And then it's like, wow, like what did we spend all that on? But the key word in here is legacy. They want to build somewhere that's going to leave, or they want to invest this money in places that are going to leave a legacy. So that makes me think that the clubs that have the greatest need, clubs who are going to build entire facilities, clubs who are going to be able to run these facilities as operations for the whole community, they're the clubs who are going to benefit the most from this round of funding. I think that you'll find maybe a handful of clubs getting given a big chunk of the money, as opposed to sort of splitting this amongst several clubs who will, like say, 20 clubs across the two divisions, who will then go and build the new changing room or toilet block. Just makes me think that the goalposts have moved a wee bit. And that's why these surveys and things are having to be taking place, because they're trying to do everything right by the taxpayer, I suppose.
It's speed. I think people are looking for now. It's like the idea that we're going to get another year and then work will start and then it will eventually kind of peter out. I guess you need to plant the seed to get the tree here, but people are fans. I guess the positive here for fans is that that money is going to be given out. They'll want their club to be right at the centre of it. Will we see changes across the Irish League? Gotta hope so. In regards to funding coming their way, I think you've touched upon it there very well. There has been long discussions in regards to more money being released at this stage. I think NIFL are holding what they have, take this, and then have a discussion more. And I think timing is probably key. It's like there's no point holding us up for, they will argue, another couple of years. Get it in now, while before it gets, even from a value proposition, it feels even less. And away they go. So that is a positive, that money will come eventually into the league. Talking about money getting into the league, being swapped around the league, let's go through all the transfers that have happened so far. Interesting time, because it's felt like plenty has happened, but I don't know, have we hit the peak? Are we in this weird lull? Like, a lot of the teams have been more busier than others. The one thing that I'm viewing when it comes to all 12 of these teams, I think there is an argument to say going into this season, we have the strongest 12-team league we have ever had from 1 to 12.
Certainly, in recent memory, I would say so. I would say that you're getting, and this is the effect, in my opinion, of full-time football, because there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that if Glentoran were accommodating part-time players this season, then Shannon Clucas would still be at Glentoran, because he was very good for us and never let himself down, never let the team down. But as a result, he's gone to Carrick, who are a bottom six team. So they're benefiting from that. Josh Carson, another one, really good player, could easily have played in a full-time team, but he's gone from Corrigan to Ballymena. So you're starting to see the benefits. The bottom six teams are starting to see the benefits of players filtering down the league, which are going to then make those bottom six teams stronger. And You already get bottom six teams, giving a really good account of themselves against the top six. It's not like they get hammered every time they play. So that's really exciting for the league. And I think that'll continue on. There's just some people that full time setup doesn't suit.
I'm going to ping pong around here. Let's start with your Glens. I'm looking at the ins and outs, and we have out the door Bobby Burns. We don't know where he's going, but highly suggested that he will skip the Irish League and go straight to Galway in the League of Ireland. Clucks his way to Carrick. Ben Cushney went to Bangor eventually. Still no news on Roy Donnelly. Charlie Lindsay returns to Derby County. Reece Marshall went to Glenavon. A couple of players go to Portadown. Like McCulloch's gone. Kirk McLaughlin Jr.'s gone. Webber's gone. Aidan Wilson returns to Scotland. That is almost a team in itself. And so far, you've brought in a keeper. Irons in fires, is that what everyone's saying in East Belfast? And also, I feel like, is it a Hungarian keeper you've brought in?
Yeah, he's from Hungary. Yeah.
That I mean, I feel like I've seen this movie before.
The good thing is about the keeper. So he has a pedigree, whereas any other keeper we've signed before has been like was signed Antolovic, I believe, was a recommendation. We signed him on, couldn't be 100% on that. But the Dale Cooling, for example, the idea was Dale Cooling was going to come in and be really good, and we were going to get big money for him from a team from England. We paid a fee for him, and remarkably, we ended up making profit because every time he played for Gibraltar, we ended up getting a fee of like £5,000-6,000 or something. And he played that many times that we ended up in profit when we then sold him on. So the difference this time around is that this keeper, so he was at clubs in England. I think he was at Stoke and he was at Peterborough, and then he ended up at Maidenhead in the non-league. He was playing 2 years in Maidenhead, won their fans player of the year in his first season, and he only joined in January. Was absolutely brilliant for them in his second season, and he was about to secure a move to the Football League, League One or League Two, I'm not sure which. So he wasn't signing a new deal there. I was about to sign a deal for the Football League club, and then he done his ACL and MCL. So that was last April, so it kept him out for a year. So he's now looking to rebuild his career. Bad injury, but maybe not so bad when you're a goalkeeper. So it gives me a bit of hope that he has good pedigree. 6'5", I believe he is. He's a big lad. So it'd be interesting.
Does he work in finance?
Does he work in finance?
Blue eyes?
Well, I think that at the end of the day, I think that we have to get a goalkeeper in because 10 years ago, the Glens did pre-season without goals. It was in nets. They didn't have any nets. So it came round to the start of the season, and the Glens weren't scoring any goals. And everyone was like, why are we not scoring goals? And Curtis Allen talked about it on my podcast, and he says, well, because we went the whole pre-season without training with any nets. So could you imagine if we had went half the pre-season without training, without a goalkeeper? You know, it would have been
But sure,
it would have been scoring goals for fun.
I don't know. Is you not some teenager or like stick the tallest defender in that? Madness. Well, so you're waiting for many more to come in through there. We don't know where Weber's going to go. Your former reserve keeper. We know where your former starting goalkeeper is away to. Him and Shea McCartan have both went to Portadown, which I think was one of the early quite striking moves. It had been highly rumoured in the days beforehand that there was going to be a bit of a East Belfast exodus to Portadown. They're up now in the top flight and they are making top flight moves. I'd say goalkeeper was a position that wasn't particularly a strength for Portadown last year. You would say with Shea McCartan, despite some people who might not have an opinion of him that he's a top six goalkeeper, I still think that he is an excellent acquisition for Portadown, who's trying to stay in this division. Add in Shea McCartan, who again is very much a Marmite player. I think he could do very well with Portadown. And when you look at the options, you've got to say he could be an excellent acquisition for them if they kind of build the team around McCartan's strengths.
Yeah, if you get Shea on a good day, he's really good. Just the unfortunate thing is that you don't get, or we didn't get many of those good days. He when he turned it on, he was really good. But he can turn it off very quickly as well. So it just sort of depends what Shane McCartan you're going to get. When the going gets tough, he was never too close to be found. He was one of them players. Aaron McCarry, on the other hand, he got the really hard time. Now he had a really poor season. He'll admit that, especially from January onwards. Confidence absolutely shot to bits. He was in a struggling Glentoran team and just was making so many bad mistakes, and that was epitomised in the playoffs. There, you just watched him and Luke McCulloch had an absolute calamity of errors. But I do think that since I mean this is a low bar. I'm about the drop here, but since Elliot Morris retired, he's probably the best keeper the Glens have had. But he did pull off some really good saves for the Glens. Doesn't come off his line, or he just refuses to come off his line. Doesn't collect crosses. But all Irish League keepers have their weaknesses, and that's why I'm glad the Glens went out of the Irish League.
It's not an area of strength across the league. So for Portadown, they had an issue with that last year. I think fans would have been crying out for a solid, nailed on Premiership goalkeeper, and you'd probably say they've got it. They are taking a risk with McCartan, but it's probably a calculated one. He did all right. I thought on the eye for Glentoran last year. It's that I think this is going to be like the thing that's going to be associated with him. You would think that he's probably going to get at least 10 goals for Portadown, sticking a few pens in there to add along the way. They would take that. And one of the more interesting ones is that Stephen McCulloch has went from Ballymena to Portadown to add a bit more to their defence. So again, these are all solid Premiership players, been there, done that. Carfrail gets added in, but I imagine from Ballymena technically, but had been with Portadown the season before last, and then I had been at Limavady. So maybe perhaps he'll come in. I can't see him being a starting player for them, but to then dip into Ballymena, who have definitely been the story of this transfer window so far in my eyes. You talked about it earlier on. This was the tightening our belts team, and now it looks as though the chat is that an old friend or a familiar face has come in and said, I'm going to help stimulate this team. And my goodness, was a team that needed stimulated. And they lose Steve McCulloch, they lose Scott Whiteside to Linfield. Fraser Taylor's away, a couple of loans go back, and they have very much benefited from this Coleraine exodus of players who don't want to go full time. They've taken on Josh Carson, they've taken on Aaron Jarvis. They then pick up only a few days ago Danny Lafferty from Institute. He obviously had a couple of months there. He's stepping up to the top flight with them. Keelan Loughran's returned to try and sort out that defence for them. Then you have Joe Murray, who's with the Swifts last year, and Jack O'Mahony from Coleraine, who's been bounced around a winger. I mean, they needed bodies. They needed players who could impact the game, particularly from the centre of the park. And I think these are good starts.
Without a doubt, it's you need to look at last season and you just think, where can you improve? And this is a solid improvement. I think that Ballymena are a club who seem to have a bit of money now and just need to spend it wisely, and their aim will be to stay in the league. That is ultimately what their aim will be to do. They'll not be looking at breaking into the top six, I don't imagine.
And I don't think they will. The big issue now is still goals. It's attacking talent. Joe Moore and Jack O'Mahony down the wings. That's grand, but I don't know if they're absolute nailed on starters. I wouldn't suggest that they are. Still need, again, hen's teeth forwards. I would describe Carson and Jarvis as brown bread signings. They are solid, they are sturdy, and overall they might not be thrilling and exciting, but they are good for you. And that's the type of players they probably need, because they didn't have that. They didn't have that kind of nous and experience. And I just think they will need. It's exciting for them, absolutely. Look, they've had to throw out a bit of cash to get these in transfer fees. They got some back for Scott Whiteside and potentially Stephen McCulloch from Portadown. So there's a bit of like for like there. More bodies, more quality, and probably attacking talent would be on the menu, please. To go then to Coleraine as they start this new era of full-time football up there and investment. We talked about the Coleraine exodus. Rodney Brown out. Josh Carson goes to Ballymena. Darren Cole's gone. Kieran Farron's gone. Defender there. Martin Gallagher's gone. Lee Harkin's away. Aaron Jarvis goes to Ballymena. Stephen Lowry's gone. Will he continue on his career? I don't know. I'm sure he's up towards I think maybe 37, 38 kind of number there. So will he keep going? Again, he's had really bad injuries over the past few years. Conor McDermott technically is gone. Conor McHenry was one we knew was being released. Mullins gone. And then O'Mahony, Tosh, Jake Wallace, and Ronan Wilson then moves to the Championship. So a lot of players out, but they are bringing some in. Cameron Stewart, no, not that one, coming in from Ipswich. Cal McClelland is going to add a bit of beef and steel. That's an interesting loan from Hibernian. I quite like that. And then they interestingly bring in Kirk McLaughlin, who from Glentoran, striker, young, have played for Coleraine, went to the Glens, hasn't really kicked on that much. Did have a nice little loan spell the second half of around that of the season for Institute. He comes in. I imagine he'll be positioned as the young hope / third striker.
Yeah, well, they have had to change things very, very quickly. I was amazed that they did this in one window. I thought that all the talk was that they were going to transition slowly into this sort of hybrid and then full-time setup. But no, they've just went absolutely gung-ho, released everyone, changed the manager, brought in, put in new structures in place and brought in all these, got rid of all these players. Haven't really brought many in yet. Couldn't tell you anything about Kyle McClelland, to be honest with you. But I'm sure they've done the research and they know what they're getting there. Cameron Stewart is one of those that you would take good experience for them. Knows full-time football, which is really beneficial. So he could prove a solid signing for them. And then you also need to look at who he's replaced and is it an upgrade? And I'm sure they'll say it is. Kirk McLaughlin, I think he'd be more willing to sit and bide his time at Coleraine on their bench, his hometown club, and try to break into the first team that he would have at Glentoran, where he probably wasn't going to get an opportunity. He got brought back from loan. He didn't get a sniff. He played maybe one game. So I don't think that you'll see, I don't think you can really blame him for going back there. Released an awful lot of players. Biggest surprise for me is probably Josh Carson, who I thought was very good. And I don't think that was the case that Josh didn't want to move to full-time football. I think it was just the case that Coleraine had to make it worth his while, and they didn't. And it's hard because I think he's 32 now. And how are you going to match whatever? I don't know what he does for a living, but you would have to match his salary plus what he was getting from Coleraine already to make it anywhere worth his while to give up his job. It's a difficult one.
And we will see, I think, more as more teams go full-time, and there is this literal and less metaphorical split, that you will see some teams really benefit from the look. You don't have to be full time here, but we'll make it worth your while to. It's just more beneficial for them to kind of do both and have the career, but it's also maybe just more beneficial from a financial point of view to go part time and take on their 9 to 5 or whatever their work is wage. Coleraine have also kind of done these like signings in that, Shevlin's got like a new deal that's taking him full time. Others have done this. Glacken's done the same. So there's like this. We are really locking down with the players that they're going to go for. Obviously Jim McGonigal and others came in January to add a bit. Scott and Brown. So like it's exciting up for Coleraine. Again, it probably just need maybe one or two bodies to really set out their stall that they are not only a top half team but beyond, potentially nipping at the heels of the Linfields and the Larns. You touched upon it there. Big news. I didn't think this was a massive surprise, and I kind of want to suggest that I thought this was going to happen all along. I feel like I suggested on this podcast that was a weird move to bring in Dean Shields as this extra body. Obviously got the family connection with Owen Kearney, and I kind of joked is like Dean the daytime mummy and then Owen was going to be the evening mummy, and it looks as though no, Owen's going to sit back and just let Dean do it all as the manager. So Owen Kearney sticks around, but as this kind of overseeing in the stands kind of position, and it's a lot of pressure on Dean Shields, but clearly he's been about the club before. Some people would have suggested that what he was doing with Dungannon wasn't as effective because they weren't essentially. If he could instill his ideas with better players, it would have been more successful.
Yeah, well, I think that Korean have sort of taken, and I've said this, the friends that like, I thought that anyone going full time now would have so much evidence that they would just be able to get it right. Unfortunately for Korean, it looks like what they've done is, in my opinion, is they've taken like all the wrong things that Glentoran have done over the last 5 years, and they've just done it all in one pre-season. For example, they've gone full time so quickly. Do they have the infrastructure in place for that to happen? Because when we went from the hybrid system to the full time setup, I'm not convinced that we had the infrastructure there to do that. So Dust didn't benefit from it. It's a lot of upheaval. It's going to be a whole new team. They've brought in a manager who the fans are absolutely against bringing in. On top of that, the old manager's still lingering there in the background, which sort of sounds familiar. You've got but when the Glens brought in Rodney McAree, everyone thought that Rodney was going to end up being a manager, of course, which he did, and he ended up not sticking around very long. It's all very strange. Now, I think that had Korean not have done the whole hog full time this summer, the idea would have been Oren Kearney does this season as manager and then sort of takes a backward step to let Dean Shields come in. But that hasn't happened. They've gone fully full time and thus have had to change the manager. So there is a lot of upheaval or a lot of shocks that the fans aren't completely convinced. But what they have done this right is the owners have arranged a meeting with the fans straight away. So they get to go in and sort of settle some nerves and explain what they're doing and what their thought process is.
I wonder at this early stage, without having seen a full docket of players, it's starting to feel for me expectation on Korean will be high, and if it's a fifth place position this time in 11 months, is that really good enough for the project that they're putting together, the investment right now?
I think that they'll probably disclose that at that meeting they're going to have. I think that they'll put together a plan. Some teams some setups vocalize it, and some put it in the documents. Like Crusaders did that time, they had a plan of what they wanted to do. I think if they can just sort of secure their place in the top six, as in be really, really solid, like not no risk of dropping out of it. They'll aim to finish above Crusaders, certainly. Perhaps they'll aim to finish above Glentoran. Obviously, you don't know what sort of transfer business Glentoran are going to do. Either way, it can be sort of, it's one of these ones that Dean Shields can spin, isn't it? He can say, oh, well, this is just the first year of the project. It's a lot of upheaval. We've just signed new players, with the chance of Europe and all this. On the flip side, the fans can say, oh, we've invested a lot of money. We've decided to do it this way. We should be achieving X, Y, and Z. No idea what their expectations will be. I mean, I'm sure their fans will expect bare minimum in Europe and perhaps a trophy. But well, it's going to be interesting to see because it's going to be this. I foresee it now. I think that this time, in 6 months' time, we'll be sitting here talking, and you'll be like, "Oh, I've got six teams in the top four." That one of them ones where you're trying to,
Yeah,
where you're trying to figure it out.
that's the way I think the league at the top end's going. It's strong teams overall, and two of them are not going to be happy campers, and what it also means that we're going to have big clashes, meaningful clashes every week. And then there's going to be the odd shock along the way. Going to some of the outs of Korean, the big one for me is Conor McHenry. We knew he was leaving out of contract, heavily rumoured to Glentoran, felt like a Glentoran signing, but he's back to Larne. Interesting move, as I very much feel he is a off the striker wide player, and that isn't a position that you have at Larne, really, do you?
No,
Unless McHenry's another striker again. I know he played a significant chunk of the season as a semi kind of off the striker forward player. Is he just saying I'm a striker now?
yeah, it's a weird one because likewise, it's rumored that Declan Devine doesn't play with that sort of player. He plays a 3-5-2, going by his previous clubs. I know that Warren Feeney was really keen on Conor McHenry, but I did think that maybe he would end up with the Oval. But then when I heard Larne were interested, I heard on Friday night that he'd signed for Larne. and I was like, wow, that's really unexpected. I didn't expect him to be in for that sort of player. Do you think he'll maybe play more towards the middle, or again? We've seen Lauren change the way they play in the last couple of years. You know, they went from playing this beautiful, expansive football to just trying to be a solid Irish League team at times as well. So it's maybe season as a plan B. Maybe they've looked at their weaknesses last season where they played the 3-5-2 and thought, well, maybe we need someone to be able to play on the wing, cut inside, and has an eye for goal, and is maybe that wee bit ball greedy who isn't willing to just take the easy option and pass it, and just try and be that second option.
I don't see him starting in the current setup. I can't. Maybe they'll try and
No.
focus him in the center of that park. Can't see him being a wing back, but maybe in how attacking they play their players. But then he's not going to unsettle either of the league leading wing backs that they have there. And then the only place I can see it is one of the two up top, and I could see that working from speed, from skill, from a goal scoring point of view, from the ability to dribble on the ball. But is he then unseating a bonus or Ryan? And then you also have Paul O'Neill as this third striker that's up, throw O'Neill down in the pecking order. Perhaps again things can move, or is he a sub where Lauren swap it out where it's not going well? Brilliant. You take off one of the midfielders, or you take one of the centre backs off, and all of a sudden you go 4-3-3. And because that's where I feel McKendry's strength is, coming off the wing, cutting in along a front three of a main striker and wide players outside. So that'll be interesting. They lose Scott Allen, which never really worked out, that loan. Daniel Kern moves on, even though Kearns was kind of just a squad player floating around doing a bit of coaching. McCart, youth player, moves to Newry. Orozco goes back to Salt Lake. I think he'll be a player they'll need to fetch a body in to replace in the centre of the park. Isaac Westendorf, gone. Never really worked out for him. Roshan Williams, gone. So there's kind of squad bodies to fill there for Larne. And going into Europe, look, I think that their transfer business has been held up as league leading. So now it's about how that looks in what is now year 3 of trying to keep going for the league realistically. Linfield, excellent start so far. They lose Matty Clark as well as Daniel Finlayson to Livingstone. Finlayson in particular is a big blow, but is that Sam Roscoe's music coming back? That's a great sign to bring back. Scott Whiteside feels like a bit of an extra player to add into the squad. Cammy Ballantyne's just moved in from St Johnson, a midfielder, definitely an area that they could use bodies and players that have full-time experience. To go back to some of the outs, Jordan Stewart's moved on, but we kind of felt that was going to happen. Newbury's went to Cliftonville. Again, he's probably been replaced at the back line with Whiteside, perhaps because no is an automatic starter. And then we've seen a couple of pretty, if the chat is true and what the transfer fees are, some hefty transfer fees come their way for youth players. Aidan Doherty's gone to Blackburn Rovers. We all know about Braden Graham going to Everton. That was hefty enough, I'm sure. And then Ciaran O'Neill is rumoured to go to Arsenal. Again, a player who never really got a run in the team, mainly because I'm sure they were trying to keep ready to move on and play full-time football next year with the team, or at least moved to a English team the year after. So that'll be helpful to fill the coffers of Linfield, but there's still a few bodies to be added.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny. Most teams, when they sign players, their fans overhype the players and create this fanfare that the player's the best that's ever played the game. At Linfield, you have the complete opposite. And every player that they sign, their fans seem extremely disappointed. And it's just like a sort of running theme. It's like they've never signed a good player. It's bizarre. Sam Roscoe is just a good Irish League player for them. He knows the league. He knows Linfield. He's not going to be on the level of, say, Jimmy Gallagher before him. I don't think. I think Hall is a better player than him. I think he's good. But he's a really solid option. I was surprised at the Scott Whiteside stuff. He was being linked to the Korean, and I could definitely have seen that happen. There seems to be a bit of a merry-go-round between Ballymena and Korean. So I was surprised to see him there, but then again, everyone needs a squad, and this is what I've been saying. People are cracking up as well about at my own club of Glentoran bringing back Jordan Jenkins, but you need a squad. You can't just play with 11 good players. You need players who offer options and players who will do a job. And Scott Whiteside's certainly that. And then the guy Ballantyne who caused absolute mass confusion because there's someone with the exact same name playing in the same league. They played centre half, so no one knew who Linfield had signed, and then it turned out to be the attacking midfielder. Know nothing about him, but sure, Linfield, you can take a punt on them sort of players. They've came off for them before. They got Chris McKee, he's from here obviously, and that them sort of signings happen. Finlayson, he's good. He's a good example.
Yeah, yeah. Best of the rest here. Carrick bring in Clucas, and then a couple of weeks later brings in Luke McCullough. I mean, former Glentoran players, as you're saying, McCullough was full time there. Big commitment of a 3-year deal for him at the back. They're no stranger to experienced centre backs at Carrick. I mean, if there was a some sort of ride share of former Glentoran players going to Carrick training every week, it feels like it would be a minibus now.
Well, I can name you basically a starting 11 near enough. You've got Glendenning and nets with Gordon, Stewart, and McCulloch at the back, Cherry, Clucas, and Crowe in midfield, and Allen and Gibson up front. It's pretty much a Glentoran team when the takeover first happened in 2020. It is the Glentoran team. All you're missing is one more player, and you've got a full 11. So it's you can see what they're maybe trying to do there.
Well, that's a solid signing. I'd say McCulloch, I know he's had injury problems, probably hasn't been the same player off the back of that big injury he had, but has played through the leagues in England, had a mixed spell if you took the entirety of his Glentoran adventure.
Yeah, I have to say about Luke McCulloch, his first season at Glentoran, he was absolutely fantastic. Like I can't even put it into words how good he was that season. He won our Player of the Year. He cleaned up Player of the Year. He got in the league's Team of the Year. He was brilliant. He looked an absolute cut above. He looked like a football league player who had came over to the Irish League to play. That's exactly what it was. He got a second ACL injury or third ACL injury in midfield for Glentoran at the start of the season. I suppose last season, the season before that. And he was rushed back. We needed a centre half. He was rushed back. He ended up playing beside Harry Murphy. And he looked a bit off the boil. Started this season, after having pre-season under his belt, he started really, really well. Not quite as good as what he was. Now, he has his weaknesses. He's not absolutely brilliant in the air, which isn't ideal for an Irish League defender. But then after January this year, the season really caught up with him. And it just looked like his legs it maybe gone a bit. He was looking a really frustrated character, and I really like Luke, and he captained us for most of the season, and you felt bad for him because his body clearly wasn't letting him do the things he wanted to. Really experienced player for Carrick. As like I say, has captained Glentoran, has played in the Football League in Northern Ireland International, went to the Euros in 2016. So he will be great for their dressing room. 3-year contract, big risk.
It's a big investment, but I've talked before about 5-year deals being handed out to some kind of younger players. I mean, big swings are the soup of the day. It's what's going down a lot of the times, and that's definitely one of them. But that's essentially what there was undoubtedly a battle for his signature, and that's one of the factors that probably helped get it across the line. Elsewhere, Cliftonville haven't really added anybody. Michael Newbury comes in. Luke Collin gets confirmed from Flight. I think Ashford's a big loss for them, kind of only got confirmed a couple of weeks after, talk of Ronan Hale moving on as cool, but, was obviously still has the potential for that. So that's still suck it and see with them. For the Crews, they add in, and you kind of knew they needed to add in bodies, but Jacob Blaney from Hibs, you've got Kieran Offord from St Mirren, he's a centre back, is he? And then Billy Vance comes in, but he played for Crewe United, but was really kind of from the Football League. But Jordan Stewart's the name that everyone will know, and you're probably saying straight in that's your Heatley replacement there, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that Crews needed to get bodies in. They've signed some players that we'll never have heard of. But I mean, they needed to get a mixture of. Well, they've sort of had to bring their squad age down, didn't they? And that's exactly what they've done. Because they're bringing in young players. But Jordan Stewart is a good signing for them. I think if they can keep him fit, a lot of experience and a good player on his day.
Further down the league, Dungannon bring back Dylan King. Really like this signing. John McGovern in from Newry City. That's a player that was touted a season and a bit ago that a lot of top teams, League of Ireland teams, were looking at him. Had an injury plagued start to the season, had moments but didn't kick on to be the potential game changer that Newry would have required. Dungannon's an interesting team to go into because he will be one of the main men there and has the chance to make it his team. He's been given the number 9, and from there, no doubt, it's either do brilliant and Dungannon get another transfer fee for excellent player development, or he becomes a really solid Irish League player with them. It's kind of win-win for the Swifts.
John McGovern is a player who I think everyone thinks is older than he is. He's still young. He was playing really, really well for Newry. And if you remember, he was being touted to Glentoran and Linfield only a couple of seasons ago. It's a good move for him. Good chance to get his career sort of back on track. But it's also a good opportunity for Dungannon to just get themselves a really good player, because it's a really good place to play your football. Dungannon, no one really has a bad word to say about it when they go there. Rodney McAree has a good record of developing players, and he's still young enough that he can learn plenty. So that's a really shrewd move from Dungannon, and they'll be aiming to have a probably similar season to last year.
There's a chance there that just the James Teelan experience suggested to him maybe it's better to develop a bit further, become one of the key players again in another team, and then take the next step. I'm sure James Teelan thought he was coming in to be a nailed on starter, but that was a difficult season for him, I'm sure, if you were in his camp. And I think he'll obviously want to crack on at the Cruise, but could be an interesting player where if after pre-season and a few of the games he's not nailed on to start again for the season under Cadell, he could be someone that a lot of teams will be trying to slip in on loan once again. Couple outs from Dungannon. One that caught my eye was Lewis Francis. This is a young 20-year-old mega tall centre back for them. Was on loan at Bangor last year. Was in the championship team of the year. Scored over 10 goals. And it wasn't going to work out for him at the Dungannon Swifts this season for whatever reason. Loughgall swoop in a similar way to McGovern. I'm sure they've said, you are our main man at the back. You add in Nathan Gartside behind him as the new keeper, Conor McDermott as a wing back. You've got Connor Kerr from Glenavon. He returns to Loughgall as the other wing back. Loughgall, it was going to be a difficult summer for them because so much of their success last year was built on using this bedrock of a great side, and in this next step, players are going to be picked off at the top end. Players are going to fall away that ended up just not have the ability to play Premiership football week in and week out. You see the likes of Ollie Taggart retiring and all the rest. There's been the odd loan. I think if you're Loughgall, you'll be really delighted with the 4 players you brought in so far, and still with a Benji McGee on your squad list so as it stands.
The £100,000 man. I think that they'll be delighted with their business so far. They'll be delighted that they've still got Benji McGee. Can't see Benji McGee going anywhere. Don't think he's going to get a move across the water. I think it's the right move for him to stay at Loughgall. If I was his, well, not so much his agents, because his agents are sort of out there to get a few quid. But if I was his parents, for example, I'd just be suggesting him to stay put at Loughgall. To continue to see how it gets on there. They're keeping Nathaniel Ferris. That's a big one. He gave Glentoran an absolutely terrible time earlier in the season. He had a super second half of the season. They are a solid team, and again, in 6 months' time, we're going to be sitting here going, "Oh, we have too many teams not getting relegated from the Irish League." So, such as the sort of the strength of them down the bottom of the season, it's going to be very, very hard to call.
Well, a team that I think many people will look at and go, they will need to strengthen to not be one of the real strong contenders to be fighting for their life this year is Glenavon. They've brought in so far James Carroll from Loughgall, Barney McKeown from Newry City, Reece Marshall's the big one from Glentoran returning there, and then Michael O'Connor is going to try and get things back rocking and rolling. He's a forward player, if you don't know. get his Irish League career back with Glenavon. A few of these are semi punts or players that they'll believe that they can foster and help develop and grow. Because I'm looking at Carroll and McKeown. I mean, particularly McKeown, he's had 2 seasons in a row with relegation teams that I can see a lot of goals, but in turn is still quite young and was getting like Player of the Year awards or at least nominations from a lot of supporters groups with those 2 clubs. So they've lost a few players, mainly kind of some of the players they brought in January. Hodgins come back on loan. Latifa is gone as well. So they lose older players like Ward and McCloskey. Garrett moves on. It's the team I feel like is most in flux, and it might be in flux all the way to September, and then we're looking at each other going, "Ooh, are they going to be good enough to stay up?"
That could be. I know that they got a massive bounce off O'Donnell when he first came in, but he could be someone who could be the favourite for the first managerial casualty of the season, depending on what happens between now and the end of the window. Obviously Reece Marshall is a brilliant signing on paper for them. He was a player who did very, very well for Glentoran. I would definitely have kept him, but I was surprised to see it's a 3-year deal he's got as well, considering that he's someone who is not totally convinced that he actually wants to play football long term. He's someone who isn't quite convinced that he can play a lot of football now. He has issues with his knees that mean that he's just not he doesn't have the confidence that full time football was for him. So don't know how he'll fare in the part time setup. But if they can get him fit, get him on the pitch, absolutely fantastic signing for them, and he'll do well there, no doubt. Likewise, Michael O'Connor, still young enough to make a career for himself in the Irish League. When he was at Glentoran, I actually quite liked him. He's not a 20 goal a season striker, but he's absolutely brilliant on the ball. But he is one of the, shall we say, biggest characters that I've ever met. He I don't know about you or anyone else, but I probably didn't mature properly until I was in my mid-20s, which is where Michael O'Connor is now. So you never know, maybe he'll go there and get the experience needed to become that solid Irish League player. The other 2 signings, as you said, Barry McKeown, that's probably the sort of signing that they need. They aren't going to be, they're not landing themselves. They're not thinking that they're going to go and challenge for the playoff spot next season. I don't think they're very much going to be hedging their bets and staying in the league. And it's going to be interesting to see. I know their fans are quite disappointed about losing Robbie Garrett. The banger, they thought that they would have quite liked to have kept him. So it'll be now their business is not done. So you never know. They could go out and sign 2 or 3 really good players. But the question again for Glenavon is, where are the goals going to come from?
Yeah, that's how I feel kind of with some teams there. It's going to be a dogfight. It says to me like one of what will be considered the consensus bottom 6. One of them is not going to be in the league next year, and the other one's going to have to fight in a playoff. That's just the way the league's set up right now. Very, very strong. A lot more to go. I think we haven't even seen like the likes of a lot of the loans that will eventually kind of define some of these teams. So interesting start. The rumour mill will continue to plod along, and we'll see how many twists and turns of the summer goes along. I saw there we are going to have the Charity Shield coming up on the 5th of July, the day after the election. It's going to be an evening fixture between Larne and Cliftonville. So that's handy enough. Again, it wasn't a particularly standout fixture last year between Crews and Larne, but it's still something that it's supposed
good European preparation, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it's supposed to be. So again, things will move. I'm looking forward to the summer. Maybe the Euros has kind of delayed things. That football's kind of taking a bit of a chill at the minute, but we will hit July very soon, and where all these players go, that's what we're all going to keep our eyes on. And of course, we always think of it as September. I mean, the league will kick off pretty much early August. Like, I'm already counting down, going, oh my goodness, I'm preparing for weekly podcasts in like a month.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think that's why Glentoran's transfer business is being so quick, because all the players are going to sign out the Euros at the minute. So they're waiting for them to return before doing
no Irish League players at the Euros again. Sad. What can you do? But Matthew, I've appreciated this kind of semi chill out update, kind of state of the nation, as I would call it, with yourself. Again, I'll not be back anytime soon. It'll just be see what happens. Maybe we'll just jump on the podcast to see if any kind of random news goes down. Still a bit quiet on the kit front. I mean, Cruise is black and red. Wahey. Portadown haven't announced the kit, but they kind of have this strange kit that they're sticking all their players in. And then Limfield had a new kit which has little white lines on it. And not as much red as last year.
Cliftonville have a blue kit.
Oh, they do have the sky blue kind of kit.
They said it's mint green, but in the photos it looked blue. But yeah, they said it's mint green. I love all of the wee puns people are using for releasing kits this season too. Mint condition or something was the Cliftonville one. I've seen a few other pop up.
What about your Glens? They're going to go back to green. I know they kind of rotate to kind of green, and then green and red stripes sometimes come round. You've had your little season with the white and the kind of red, green, and black tricolour down the centre.
Yeah, well, we sort of we seem to play in black all the time. I don't know if it's the kitman's choice.
Yes, you did. You played black all the time, home, away, or in the middle.
It's strange because I think that it's maybe the kitman maybe prefers playing on a black kit because it's easier to clean. Who knows? But I think that there will be some movement on a Glentoran kit by the time this comes out, or maybe just after. I'm not too sure. I have no idea, but I think that it usually is around this time of the year that we release the kits. From memory, it was a very quick turnaround last year. But I think the problem for a lot of teams these days is actually getting stock in from suppliers. I think that's a worldwide issue. So I think no one wants to announce anything too soon before they're available.
From Paris to Berlin and East Belfast as well in the mix. Okay, well, that's a little taster. Remember the Irish League. That's all the fun thing goes down. Matthew, thank you so much for the chat. We will no doubt chat in a couple of weeks, but for now, que sera.
Cheers, Peter.
Talio.